welcome to the Healing Half. My name is Mickey Spear, and yes, I am coming to you live from a closet today because my microphone picks up so much sound that the rain outside my very thin Texas windows is actually coming through my mic. So that's how you know it's rainy, and that's how you know you've got some rough windows, shall we say. So if you thank you for bearing with me as I'm coming to you live from this closet. But welcome one, welcome all. My name is Mickey Spear. I am a talk show host, musician, and author. And tonight we are going to be diving into Dia de los Muertos. And I'm so sorry if my Spanish is off, as well as the important topic of non-grief losses. Now, before I dive into all of that stuff, I wanted to quickly introduce myself, introduce the show, and maybe give you a little bit of background on why these two topics, because they might kind of seem disconnected and they might seem a little random. So again, for those of you who don't know me, welcome. If you are watching live or as a replay, in the comments section, let me know that you're here. I can see them, and I would love to know that you guys are here. It means the world that you are watching, and I really pray that you get something out of tonight's show. But when my mom was 13 years old, she passed away from cancer. And I spent the better part of a decade pretending I was fine, running away from my grief, and quite literally doing everything I possibly could to not talk about it and to not, what I didn't realize was process it. And of course, eventually you can't run from your grief or any hard emotions for forever. It's going to catch up to you somehow. And so what ended up happening is my life, again, about a decade after my mom died, it just really started to crumble. However, the walls needed to crumble on top of me in order for me to finally process what I needed to, which was the traumatic loss that I've been through. And I know that you've been through a lot of traumatic losses as well, and traumatic events. So this whole show is about encouraging us to all lean in, learn how to heal our own wounds, and learn how to help other people. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight. As I recently just got back from Mexico, I'm going to show you a picture of that towards the end of the show when I play a new song for you. But two things God put on my radar while I was in Mexico. And I was so lucky to go see my cousin get married. It was such a blast, such a fun time to be with my family and all this good stuff. But I didn't realize that Dia de los Muertos, and again, I'm so sorry. I know my Spanish is not good, but it means Day of the Dead. I guess I had heard about it before. I had watched the movie Coco before, which is so good. If you've ever seen Coco, let me know in the comment section. But when I was there in Mexico, people were starting to get ready for it, and they were starting to get really excited about it. So what I wanted to do was quickly pause and talk about this really cool tradition that happens all over the world, but specifically, predominantly in Latin America. And I just wanted to kind of share that because I feel like we can all learn from other cultures on what they do well and use their traditions and all their good stuff, as long as we, of course, give them credit from where it came from, to help enhance our lives and really just see some really cool perspective. So I'm going to quickly talk about Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, which is ending tonight, which is, of course, just like I had to come on live to talk about it because it's like happening right now as we speak. If you're like me, you probably had no idea that was what today is. I always just think that kind of season ends with Halloween. But then we're going to talk about a really cool organization after that. And again, how you can help people who are grieving in a really tangible, physical way. And then we're going to jump to kind of the second topic that came up while I was in Mexico, which is that grief really does take a ton of different forms. And a lot of us aren't really sure how to process and how to help people going through non-death losses. And with the holidays coming up, this is an important topic to talk about because odds are you are going to be meeting lots of people going through lots of struggles. And so my hope and my prayer is that for tonight, we can dive into what you can have your little antennas up for some sneaky forms of grief that are absolutely out there, as well as maybe bring some non-death losses on your radar that you might be experiencing yourself. So that's kind of the flow. We're going to start with Dia de los Muertos. Then we're going to talk about a really cool organization that you can partner with to help people who are grieving. Then we're going to end with non-death losses, where I'm going to play for you a brand new song. Odds are you haven't heard it yet unless you've been creeping around Texas and came to an open mic that I was at 2 weeks ago. But odds are it's brand new, and I'm so excited to share it with you. It's called Sisters Again, and it ties right on in to our theme of the night. So again, welcome. I am so glad you are here. Thank you for letting me know that you were there in the comments. It's great to see all of you guys. And again, even if you watch it as a replay, let me know your thoughts. I truly do go through and reread each and every one. So let's talk about this amazing holiday. So Day of the Dead. Let me know in the comment section just a quick yes or no. Have you heard of it before? Have you seen some of the decorations? And I put it on the screen, but let me solo it for just a half second. Hopefully you can still hear me, but this is what I kind of just put together before the show because I just thought it was so cool. Here I am talking about grief day in and day out. And I don't even know what other cultures do for grief that much. And I was just so fascinated by this idea. And of course, I was just in Mexico. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is like perfect timing. So really quick, and this is coming kind of right off of Wikipedia here, but this day it started in the Mexico area. However, it is very prominent kind of all over Central America, Guatemala, Brazil. I mean, a bunch of places do it. And of course, people who come from those cultures or have history with their bring it to wherever they are too. So you might know somebody who celebrates this in the States. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And as always, it's important not to assume people do celebrate it. And just like any holiday you and I might practice, every person's going to have a different interpretation on what it means in the spiritual connection, all that stuff. So let's dive on into what this tradition is. And I'll kind of share with you guys some of the stuff and then how we, of course, can implement that with our own lives. So this whole thing really came about. It's a very, very, very old tradition. Again, it came from, what we would now call Mexico, but this came from so long ago. This is well before it was even called Mexico. And this was, again, a holiday, just like a lot of our holidays, that kind of evolved over time. So when the Spanish people came on over, which is maybe a delicate way of putting what happened, and they of course were Catholic, the locals kind of began to merge this All Saints Day with this pre-Hispanic belief that they already had, which was again this day where souls and you can connect. So what this whole holiday is during this different period of time, and again, I'm learning as I go. So if you know a difference, then correct me in the comments. Please, if you have insight, share. I am by no means an expert on Day of the Dead, for heaven's sakes. Of course I'm not. Sorry if you hear my water heater, ignore that. But anyways, so what this is depends on where you live, but for some people it's a stretch of days, mostly ending tonight, which is why we have to talk about it, because it's like gearing up to this point, which is so fun. And it's very much a celebration. So if you've seen the movie Coco, that's one of the best ways to learn about it. I loved that movie. Let me know in the comments if you liked it, because it was so good. Like, as a music person, man, I thought Coco was amazing. And essentially it's a set of days that has lots of celebrations, some trick-or-treat-esque, what we would consider qualities. There's parades. It's very much a joyous celebration where they take a couple days to remember the people who have passed before them and do very specific things to honor them. And again, it's more of a celebration where during these days, again, whether people actually believe it or not, it's going to depend on each person's religion and all that stuff in the background. But in the history of the day is that during these very set few days, the spirits from the people that they had lost kind of come back into their realm, and there's almost like a party going on. And that's why, as you kind of look at the screen, you will see there's, again, it's festive. It's not necessarily sad. So I'm going to show this just because I thought this was so very interesting. Couple things that I thought were just really cool is on the top left corner, you see one of the traditions is that they will make offerings. And again, don't think of them too much as like a religious sacrifice, but it's more of tradition for a lot of people. I don't think they actually believe that the person's going to come up and eat the bread or smoke the cigarettes or drink the beer. Maybe some people do, but by far and large, it's symbolic, right? So they will come up with little shrines, whether that's in a house or on a specific grave site, and those places will have various mementos that remind them of the person that they lost, which I think is just so beautiful. And the marigold, which is like an orange flower, which you can kind of see, is very much the symbol. It's the flower of this day. So a lot of times if you tour around, you'll see lots of orange flowers, which is super cool. And then the symbol of the whole event really is what they call these decorated skulls up on top. And again, I am butchering all these names, but it's a very cool tradition that a lot of people have candy in that shape and lots and lots of decorations that look just like that. Again, people dress up for this. If you want a better background, again, I cannot stress the movie Coco enough. It's so good. It does such a good job. But what I really loved about this is they had found a way. I mean, if you look up Dia de los Muertos, you will see hundreds of pictures of people like going to grave sites and cleaning up the site and just really celebrating. And I was just like, man, that is such a cool thing. I wish us in the United States had like a joyous event that again we can celebrate the ones that we lost and kind of as a family go and bring up memories. And that's a huge part of it, is they'll do memory sharing. Every family is going to be different, but they can go to the gravesite, they clean it up, they leave gifts, they leave food, and then they talk about how that person impacted their life. I just think it's the coolest thing. And so I just want to encourage all of us, if you are watching and you have lost anybody, maybe we can incorporate some of that in our own lives. Watch Coco, get a better sense for what it is, of course. But I just think it was so cool that as a culture, they had a day to really honor their loved ones. And again, whether people actually believe the spirits are interchanging or not, that's probably beyond the point. But it's a really cool celebration. And today it ends, which is fantastic. So I just wanted to highlight that for you guys. If you learned anything or you've got extra thoughts about the Day of the Dead, please leave them in the comments. I would love, love, love for you to share that, because I clearly don't know a whole lot, but I'm learning, and that's the whole point. But speaking of honoring our loved ones, again, this is the holiday season. A lot of people are feeling extra charitable, and they also want to know not only how can they, lean into their own grief and process their own stuff, but they want to help others. We're really kind of out of Halloween season and we're moving into Thanksgiving and Christmas season. I joked in my summary email, which if you are not on my summary email, jump on, head over to mickyspear.com. I send out one a week. I mentioned this, that I'm a firm believer that Christmas tree comes out like the day after Thanksgiving. I'd love to know in the comments, when do you think is appropriate to set up Christmas decorations? And I promise you, this is not going to be a hot button disagree topic like we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's okay if we disagree on when to bring a Christmas tree out. But during the holiday season, so many people want to give and they don't necessarily know how. So I connected with this amazing organization, and thank you, Lisa, for connecting me with your amazing daughter-in-law, Leslie. Leslie, has started this fantastic way for us all to give back in really impactful, tangible ways called Be Like the Willow. And it's a movement. And I'm actually going to put in the chat feature right here, if you're watching this live or as a replay here, some ways that you can connect with this amazing organization, but I'll give it a little bit of backstory first. The first thing that you need to know is that Leslie unfortunately had a stillbirth, and her daughter's name was Willow. And like so many people who are in that situation, they never even considered that their baby would be born still. And of course, in that moment, a lot of emotions are happening. There's so much going on, but there's one thing in particular that's very, very crucial, and they're called cuddle cots. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but they're essentially carriers that you can place your stillborn baby, but it preserves the body. So that way you have more time to spend time with this, of course, bundle of joy you had been expecting so desperately all these months. And it's a huge game changer for families. But not every hospital in the United States has one. So be like the Willow. They raise money for charities that do things like donate coddle cots, donate toy elephants to be part of a forget me not basket. It's just so amazing. And I know I'm not doing it justice, but you got to go check these people out. They are awesome. You could join their Facebook group. I kind of have that on the screen. You can see there's lots and lots of people here, and it's just bringing tons of awareness, but also raising money for really amazing things like cuddle cots and these forget me not baskets that I think is just fantastic. So if you're looking to be a little extra charitable this season, I know I sure am, check out Be Like the Willow, follow them on Facebook, watch their videos, share their content, and if you feel led, please consider donating. Any amount is going to help. I just think it's so cool that this is one way we can help change people's lives for the better who are grieving. So all of that will be in my summary email. If you're not on my email list, head over to mickyspear.com. Make sure you are on it, because I will make sure all those links are ready to rock in there. But the last little thing that I just wanted to touch on before I jump to my new song called Sisters Again, and I'm so excited to be able to share it with you, is again, as we're thinking about the holidays and all this stuff coming up, if we're lucky and we get to see family, and I know I won't be home for Thanksgiving. So if anyone's in the Fort Worth area, you come visit me, right? But I will be home for Christmas. And so whether we're seeing our family then or not, it still brings up the fact that you're going to be in a room around a table with a bunch of people that you don't get to see that often. And you've got this kind of concentrated time that you get to spend together, which is awesome. But I think it's really important to take a pause and assess who's going to be at our various meetings, for Christmas through Thanksgiving. And if you're like me, you're going to have a lot of them, which is such a blessing. And then kind of take a step back and maybe think, what are they going through beyond the surface level? Because trust me, I understand it's so easy to keep it light and say, how's work going? Have you watched any shows lately? And that's all good stuff to kind of break the ice and do all that amazing small talk. But if you really want to dive into a relationship, you got to dig deeper than that. And I think it's really good for us to be aware of what we're going through, so we can maybe be vulnerable and kind of start that trend, but also put on our radar what other people might be going through. And you might be saying, Mickey, why is this coming up now? Well, when I was in Mexico, and I won't share any names, but a lot of grief came up when I was in Mexico, actually. The death loss one would be, my mom. She was a sunshine baby, and she loved, sorry, I'm going to start crying, but yeah, she just loved the sun and traveling, and her godson was the one who was getting married. So it's just like, man, like she should be here. And it was just so overwhelming. Like in Mexico, it was just the strangest thing. And we hadn't slept well, and it was very busy. So it was, when you're not, relaxed, a lot of times grief just hits you when you least expect it. But so I definitely was grieving a lot in that sense. But also, in addition to Dia de los Muertos, what also came up on my radar is someone that I was talking to was experiencing intense grief over, what we would probably call disenfranchised or a distant child. And again, not sharing names or anything like that. Don't want to give up any personal information. But this person is having a very rocky relationship with their child at the moment, and there's very little contact, and it just broke my heart, because here is somebody who's grieving, like really, really grieving, and yet the world doesn't necessarily, you're not going to get a card in the mail, right? Because no one's going to buy you flowers, and not that this person even needed flowers, but I just don't think there's an awareness around non-death losses like there is around death losses. And trust me, we still have a long way to go with death losses. But it's still, when we're talking about grief, it's so important to remind ourselves that grief is massive, and all of these things are interconnected. And so as I was talking with this person that I deeply care about, and it's just so clearly that they were grieving, it just kind of hit me that I was like, man, I wonder how many other people at our Thanksgivings and at our Christmases and other holidays you might celebrate coming up are experiencing loss, but they're not necessarily being treated like someone who's grieving. And as we get a little bit closer to Thanksgiving, we're going to dive deeper on how we can specifically help someone who's grieving and start initiating some of those conversations. So stay tuned, that's coming up. But for a moment, I just wanted to put on all of our radars some things that might be considered losses that might be really great for us to ask somebody about. And of course, be tactful about it. Remember, all grief is vulnerable, so they just might not be in the mood. However, they also might be very grateful that somebody's acknowledging the pain that they are going through, even though nobody died. And so I just wanted to quickly touch on that. And if that resonates with you, if that concept of non-death losses not getting a lot of attention, give me like an amen or a plus, or give it a heart, because I want you to just be thinking of all the things that you've gone through. So I came up with a little list of things. There's no cool acronym. There's nothing. I tried to come up with an acronym and I just couldn't. So I'm just going to go through a list of about 10 things that I really feel like we should be aware of this season. And that's not a person who died. And then I'm going to share a song that actually ties in with that too. So the first one, which is one that I just mentioned, would be disenfranchised loss. Sometimes they call it prodigal child or prodigal relationship. Basically, you were close with somebody and now you're not. And there's a big rift and you are trying to work it out, but it's just not going anywhere. Maybe this person has cut you off and they don't want to talk anymore. There's a lot of reasons why, but they're still alive. They're very much alive. And that's hard because you're grieving. And I think while I was talking with this person about, well, I was in Mexico, that was so interesting. And she just said it perfectly. She was like, yes, we are praying and we are hopeful that this relationship comes back one day. They're hoping, they're praying, they're doing everything right. But that doesn't mean in the meantime, they don't miss this child terribly, right? That they're missing holidays, they're missing weddings, they're missing just phone calls, all this stuff that they had, and now it's gone. So I think it's really important for us to ask people in situations like that, like, how are you doing? And of course, that could be, and it doesn't have to be a child, it could be any relationship that is not what it used to be. Friendships come and go. I know we talked about that 2 weeks ago. We were talking about um, the disagreements and how that can kind of ruin friendships, which I hope it doesn't for anyone listening, but it can. And then you might be grieving that you are either not as close to the person that you were once close with, or maybe you're grieving like, oh gosh, they're just not the person they thought I was. That's just another form of this. Of course, there's divorce loss or any big relationship loss, and that loss is kind of rooted. There's so much behind divorce that has loss, but one of them is it's just the life you envision is been ripped out. The rug has been pulled out from under you. And even if people understand the divorce, that like it's still hard. Even if it was the right call, it's still hard. A couple other things that came up as I was trying to brainstorm ways we can be a little bit more aware and more empathetic for others, but also ourselves. Remember, like, assess your own self and be like, man, maybe I'm carrying around some grief I didn't even realize I had. There's job loss. I know with a lot of the a lot of the stuff going on politically, there's just a lot of people who are switching jobs right now, or don't even have a job. I guess there's a huge employment gap, but still, there's a lot there. And then as we kind of keep going, there's more subtle ones that maybe are more just emotional, like loss of looks, loss of beauty, loss of a body. You're getting older. And I know that might sound silly, and that's probably not something you should comment to somebody on. How are you doing aging? You doing okay with that? Obviously, don't do that. But it's something to be aware of for ourselves, like it might sound silly, but I even know my body is changing, and like coming to terms with that, it's a lot of work. I see a counselor literally every week, and that's a very common topic that we talk about. So that's like what I would call loss of youth, dare I say. There's also You might have a great relationship with your child or a close friend, but maybe they moved away and you're spending less time with them. So you still love them, you still have a good relationship, but you're sad. We would call this maybe empty nester loss, where they're kind of there's great things about being an empty nester, but there's also a sadness there that it's really hard. And sometimes having everybody home for the holidays can be so good. And then as soon as it's gone, it just feels like this empty, gaping hole. So it's important to be aware of. Another one that I came up with is, you guys know, maybe if you've been watching this long enough, that I had to unfortunately give my cats away this past summer, and it was so hard. I still think about them all the time. I grieve them. I have a folder on my phone of over 600 photos that I've collected of them, that I open from time to time and try and practice what I preach and like really feel the loss. But I miss them so much, but they're not dead. They're very much alive, and if you're wondering, they're doing great on the little farm that they now live at, which is so awesome, but I still very much miss them, and it's been really hard, so to have to give up a pet was really tough too. And then the last one that I'm gonna kinda touch on, and this is where my song's gonna come in, is called, what I would say chapter loss. It doesn't mean it's bad, none of these pretty much mean it's bad, some are worse than others, but it just means that with every new beginning, something has to give, right? In order for things to change, something has to go. And chapter loss is just one of them. It could be your kids no longer live with you. Maybe seasonal change for me. I just know like I'm not living back in Minnesota right now, and that's weird. Like I'm happy that I'm traveling. I love doing what I get to do with my husband and my now just my dog, but it's still sad that I still miss out. And I know my dad's home and he misses me. And it's just like, oh gosh. But there's lots of chapters that we go through. And that's another thing to be aware of. So I just wanted to put a couple of those things on our radars. And of course, if any of this brought up something for you, I would highly encourage you to connect with me in any way. I've got lots of tools, lots and lots of tools for processing this. But, the old pen and paper is a great place to start too. If you just want to get a journal out and just be like, hey, what have I experienced lately that has been sad? And I bet with this pandemic, it's not that hard to think of a lot of things that we are disappointed in at the very least. So this song that I'm about to play, and I'm actually going to put up this photo. So this is me and my sisters and us in Mexico, which is so fun. And just kind of back again to the idea of this loss. One thing that just really came up for me again, it was so good to be with them. But as we're kind of getting ready and we're packing up, so for reference, it was me, my dad, and my two sisters. We call ourselves the core four. Anyways, and it's because Sean wasn't able to make it with his job, so it was just us and this Mexico thing. And in a weird way, I felt like I was back in high school. And then all of a sudden, we're packing up and we're getting ready to go. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm going to Texas. Anna's going to Miami. Katie and Dad are heading back to Minnesota. And it was just so sad. I was like, oh, no, we're supposed to be together. Like this isn't how it's supposed to go. And would I change it? Of course not, because I love where I am and I love that Anna's in Miami. But at the same time, it's still sad. And that's what I just wanted to share. This new song that I have is going to come out after Christmas, and it's called Sisters Again. And it's all about how I won't live with my sisters again, and kind of just like the grieving of that. And so my new album that's going to be coming out, in early Q1 of 2022 is going to have a lot of songs that's going to look at grief from like different components. And one of them is chapter loss. So here we go. I hope you guys like it. Hope you can hear me again. I won't live with my sisters again. No more driving to school or sneaking in boyfriends. No more yawn at the bathroom, you're making me late. Wishing so badly we had our own space. No, I won't live with my sisters again. New chapters bring new pain. My body's older, but I feel the same. I spend so much time sprinting forward in the blink of an eye. I'm 10 years older, and the door to turn back is now my friend. No, I won't live with my sisters again. From sharing a bedroom to please stop by. Christmas was fun, but will I see you in July? We'll celebrate each other, getting diamond rings, and you know at the wedding I'm gonna sing, but I won't live with my sisters again. New chapters bring new pain. My body's older, but I feel the same. I spend so much time sprinting forward in the blink of an eye. I'm 10 years older, and the door to turn back is not my friend. No, I won't live with my sisters again. How I wish I could live with my sisters again. But I won't live with my sisters again. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. I hope you liked the song. Again, if you haven't connected, find me on Spotify, on Facebook, lots of ways. I want to make sure we are being in touch with each other as we go into this season so we can learn how to love ourselves and others better. Next week, we're talking about a really tough topic, which is faith after loss, especially when you're kind of angry at God. So make sure you touch base with me next week with my Uncle Tim, who's a pastor, and I will see you then. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for sharing this with your friends. And I just am so grateful for you. Happy November.